Hey guys, I wanted to come on here to give an update on this case involving Bakari Henderson. And if you guys remember last year, this was a black male who went to Greece. He supposedly was in a bar with one of his friends when he engaged in some conversation with a white woman, at which time the man allegedly that the white woman was there with approached him and slapped him, which he slapped the man back, and then a group of white men murdered him, beat him to death and murdered him in Greece. So those men were placed in jail, and there was a trial. They were placed in jail, and like in America, because the system of white supremacy is global, their charges were reduced from murder to assault. And listen, this is something that we should not be surprised about. If people are surprised about it, it means that they don't understand the system of white supremacy. And that is really one of our downfalls. We're in the second day of December, or we're in the third day of December of 2018. And yet people act as though they still don't understand the system of white supremacy that we live in. I want to go to this quick video clip because ultimately, another trial was requested, but we should look at this as anything else. There isn't going to be any justice served because ultimately this is what they're showing every day, all day, every day, what they think of Black lives, specifically those of Black men. And, you know, unfortunately, Black men continue to put themselves in these situations. Parents are, and I don't want to say parents are not, but it kind of sounds like this boy's parents may or may not have taught him the dangers of being associated with white women. When I covered the story initially last year, I showed you guys the multiple pictures that this boy had, and everyone that he was around were white. Every single person that he was around, he surrounded himself by white people. So ultimately, it seems like he died in the exact same way that he lived, which was immersing himself in whiteness. Now, I don't know this dude personally. We don't know this dude personally. We can only go by what we've seen publicly that's been put out about him. But I'm noticing a theme with a lot of these Black men is that when they end up in situations like this, you can always trace back and see that they've secluded themselves away from Black people and only associated themselves with whiteness. So let's go to the news clip and then I'll come back for some additional commentary. We'll get into this article.
So the young Austin man killed in Greece are not giving up, and now they're getting a second chance to make sure the men who killed Bakari Henderson gets punishments they believe truly fit the crime.
KVU's Patrick Perez sat down with Bakari's mother tonight. Patrick?
Mike and Quita, Bakari's family has already spent a little more than a month in Greece this year during the first trial, and they're prepared to go back again next year to make sure Bakari gets the justice he deserves. Just hours after returning from Greece, Bakari Henderson's mother, Jill, is still trying to understand the outcome of her son's murder trial.
For them to come back and say no one was charged with murder was very, very upsetting for everyone.
Instead, a Greek court convicted 6 men on Thanksgiving Day for deliberate bodily harm, not murder, for beating Bakari to death outside a nightclub in Greece last July.
To not get that was, was a shock to everyone. We just really had no preparation for that news.
Under this verdict, the men would serve 5 to 15 years in prison, but now a second chance for justice after the prosecutor asked for a retrial with more experienced judges.
And they had 10 days to approve the appeal, and so looks like it only took them 2 days, which was phenomenal, so we're very excited.
It's a good step forward, but Jill says the prosecutor isn't seeking life sentences for all of the men. That means some of them will get a chance to start over, a chance Bakari will never get.
They still have the majority of their life left ahead of them, so they could still have children, they can have a career. I mean, they have a whole life still left ahead of them.
Jill hopes this time the court will rule in Bakari's favor.
And it was a horrendous crime, and it was something that no person deserved, not just because it's, you know, our child, but I think the country would have felt the same way had it been any child. So it's not a way for anyone to have to end their life.
And the Hendersons won't be returning to Greece anytime soon. Jill says they expect the retrial to begin sometime next spring. In the studio, Patrick Perez, KVU News.
Now, you guys saw that video clip, and what's most interesting to me is that his mother was actually surprised by the outcome of it, which tells me that she doesn't understand the global system of white supremacy. And it's really interesting how when Black people today, when they think about Europe and foreign white people, they seem to want to detach them from the type of racism that's prevalent in America, when the reality of it is that's where it started. You know, you wouldn't have had the American system right now the way that it is if you didn't have foreign European white men traveling from there over here to subjugate and oppress African people and start and implement this system of white supremacy with the assistance of Black males. So when you look at history, you see how it all ties together. But unfortunately, the mindset of Black people it's not catching up to the level of information that's been fed to them, and it really doesn't make any sense to me. No one should be surprised at this point with what's going on. No one should be surprised, because the reality of it is white supremacy isn't just restricted to here. It's not like in America they have white supremacy and show that Black lives really mean nothing beyond being able to exploit them, and that's not the case in Europe. I say young or old, male or female, foreign or domestic for a reason. And the reason I say that is because this is what's going on. This is their mentality, and it's not going to change just because you cross the ocean. But it says 9 men arrested in the beating death of an American student outside a bar in Greece in 2017 were cleared of murder but convicted of assault charges on Thursday. Now, the thing of it is, what mirrors what goes on in America is the skewing of crime data. Because although they murdered this dude, he lost his life because of their actions. They took his life when they intentionally and purposely beat him to death. They had to have known that many men beating on one man would cause his death. So they planned that was their intent. However, they knocked it down to assault charges. So the same thing that happens in America, where when it's a white person committing a crime, they always knock it down to the lesser crime. They're not charging them with murder, although they committed murder. A court in Patra in western Greece reduced the charges to grievous assault, handing 6 men sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years in prison and freeing 3 others after convicting them of simple assault for the brutal attack on the student. Notice how this is not even felonious assault. They're giving them simple assault for murdering this black boy or this Black man. And now my thing of it is I'm not saying that he deserved to die. What I'm saying is that Black men continue to put themselves in this situation. And nobody should be looking at it as any bashing of them. Nobody should be looking at this as any hatred towards Black men. They should look at it as a precautionary tale. When you know the system that you live in, but you pretend that you don't live in it, and you think that you can travel the globe and somehow be affiliated with these white women, and because you have voluntary access to them, that somehow the situation has changed, then you're continuing to put yourself in this predicament. Black men continue to put themselves in these situations, and then they cry foul and they ask for justice despite the fact that they're not doing anything to defend themselves. Why do you think you're going to get justice and you're not doing anything to seek it? Number one. And number two, why are you still putting yourself in these type of situations? Black men being murdered over white women is not a new situation. This has been going on for hundreds of years, yet they continue to put themselves in these situations. It said the verdict disappointed the parents of Mr. Henderson, who have said that they were hoping all men would be sentenced to life in prison. The prosecution attorney, Andreas Patsis, said that the outcome had shattered the relatives and that they did not think justice had been done. The decision spurred Mr. Henderson's parents to warn other Americans against allowing their children to visit Greece. Now, it's interesting how they'll allow him they'll warn them to not go to Greece, but they won't warn their children to stay away from white women? Because had he been in Greece talking to a non-white woman, how likely is it that this would have happened? If someone can be murdered and there is no justice, what makes you think you can send your child to another country and be safe? Mr. Henderson, mother Jill Henderson. No, that only applies to you as a black person, because if it applied to anybody else, their country would be backing them and they will be getting justice. But because your son is black and black people don't defend themselves or try to protect themselves, not even in the least against white supremacy, then of course, like, what are you doing to facilitate justice? It makes no sense. It says the attack on Mr. Henderson in July 2017 at a resort of Laganas was apparently prompted by an argument over a female bartender. Security footage captured a swarm of men kicking and punching Mr. Henderson, who was chased down the street. Again, this is nothing new. They said he died within 30 seconds, police officials said. At the time, a female bartender told investigators that when she posed for a selfie with Mr. Henderson, who was African American, a man standing nearby commented, "There are a lot of Serbs in this bar. Why are you talking to a black guy?" Now, mind you, these are the same race as white supremacists. Their mentality is the way that it is globally. These Serbians are white. She said the man then punched Mr. Henderson, who responded by hitting him over the head with a beer bottle. The 9 men charged with the beating were a British citizen of Serbian origin who worked as a bouncer at a bar where the brawl broke out, a Greek bartender, and 7 Serbian men. Their names were not immediately available. The Briton received the heaviest penalty from the Greek court, 15 years in prison for intentional bodily harm resulting in death. 5 of the Serbian suspects received terms of 5 to 10 years for causing grievous bodily harm. The court refused a request by their lawyers for the term to be suspended. The Greek bartender and 2 other men were released after receiving convictions for simple assault. Again, this is the same old song. It really is. And the thing of it is unfortunately, this is not going to stop happening. And the reason why it's not going to stop happening is because no matter how many situations come out like this, black men are going to continue to put themselves in these situations. And we know that because despite the history, despite the present accounts of it, they still continue to do this. And so I'm not understanding what it is that black men are expecting from not only just the women and people in their community, but from society at large. Because if you're going to continue to put yourself in these situations, you have some control over the outcome. But if you're going to not have self-control and learn from the past and the present, what do you expect anybody to do? This boy or this man didn't have to die. And he didn't have to die if his parents would have told him to stop. And I'm just assuming, because they could have very well, he's a grown man, they could have warned him about the dangers of being around white women, and he could have ignored it just like many other black men do. So I can't even really put this on his parents. I mean, I can say it's a possibility that they didn't teach him, but then it's a possibility that they did teach him, and he simply made his own decision. And again, he wanted to surround himself by whiteness, so he died the same way that he lived, surrounded by whiteness. But you guys let me know what you think. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next video.